Okay, I am back with another decode. It's the dollar bill again, and we're looking at the Eye of Providence with the pyramid underneath. And we're going to decode, basically just decode the angles in this thing. I'm not looking at any other significance with other symbolism that uses the same stuff, or the number of bricks here, or any of this Latin, or any of the Roman numerals, or any of that stuff. We're just looking at angles that are within this thing. Okay. That's it. So we're going to get straight into the decode with one caveat. The caveat is this image that I'm decoding, the dollar bill image, was taken from Wikipedia. So it's only as good as the image that's on Wikipedia. And for looking at angles, I'm going to measure these angles, if the image on Wikipedia isn't right for some reason, either it got distorted when it got transferred from the actual thing into the computer, or if somebody intentionally distorted it, or whatever, for whatever reason, maybe it's not a completely true, accurate $1 bill to start with. Who knows? And maybe there's some variance between dollar bills. Who knows again? So what I'm saying is these angles that I'm going to show you have got to be taken with a pinch of salt. And the other little caveat is when you expand this image out and zoom in on it, you'll see that the lines that form the edges of this image are not 100% dead straight. So I've had to use a line of best fit on the image itself. Okay, and so because I want to keep this fairly simple and not too complicated. Basically, all I did, I'll tell you my method. I basically zoomed in on it as much as I could, so it was on, could see the whole thing on the page still, but it was as big as I could get it. Then I put some fairly transparent paper over the top of it, just taped my paper on the screen, and then I used a ruler and a pencil, nice sharp pencil, and I drew my lines on, basically just traced the outline. And then from there, I went and measured the angles. Okay, and it's only really as good as my angle measure as well, which is just a cheapy one out of the kids' pencil case. So it just is what it is. This is what I came up with. It's definitely interesting, the numbers that I came up with, so I guess we'll just jump straight into the angles. But I will say before I forget, I would have done this video yesterday, because this is when I did the bulk of this is kind of when I really noticed all this stuff, was yesterday. It was kind of late on the 14th, late that night, and then I basically did most of it in the middle of the night on the 15th, which is important. Okay, 3:15, the 15th of March is what I'm talking about here, is important because, well, and the 3:14 of course is important because of the reference to pi with all this stuff. But the 3:15, again, this is this number revealing itself to me again, and we're right on the day basically when I'm finding this stuff out. So let's go to my sort of sketch that I've got in paint. This is not the exact size of what I had on my piece of paper. I've had to resize it to get it on paint, but basically I just taped my piece of paper over the top of the screen here and just sort of pulled my lines underneath as best as I could as well. So this is kind of proportional, let's put it that way. I've had to make it a little bit, it would have been about an inch, at least another inch bigger, maybe a little bit more actually, because it was kind of off of this screen. So anyway, what numbers do I got? So another little note before we actually do the numbers is that I want to say is the eye portion of the image, okay, the Eye of Providence at the top here. The lines that come off of that thing from the very tippy top do not line up with the bottom pyramid. Okay, the first thing to note is that the line on this side here, if you can see my cursor where I'm putting that mark, That line is just a little bit wider off of the top of this thing than the bottom of the pyramid here. Okay, just a fraction, just like a millimeter to a 16th, maybe at the max a 16th, because I had a much bigger image of this. But what I will say is this line here, it is parallel with this line. Okay, even though it's bigger, even though it's wider, it's parallel. So that's important. Okay, because what that means is, because that's a little bit wider, these bottom pyramid lines do not come straight to this point. They're just slightly below it and offset just a tiny little bit. So that was the first thing to note on that side. And on this other side here, this line is not parallel with this bottom line. It's not parallel. This line here is not parallel with this line here. Okay, it's actually coming off at it's actually coming off at more of an angle. Okay, so if we were to extend this top line down all the way, it would end up coming somewhere out over here. Okay, if you get my drift. So that's the first thing to note about that top, the Eye of Providence type part. It's actually bigger than the bottom pyramid proportionally. Okay, it's not going to line up. You know, if you drew a pyramid from it, it would end up bigger. The other thing to note is that this is the actual eye encompasses the dark portion, which is between these two lines here, the shaded portion of the pyramid. The eye actually encompasses that, yeah. It comes all the way out to the edge of the shaded portion. Okay, that's important as well, right? So all I've done is, once I got all my lines on here, and you can see where they kind of, this would have been dead space here between the two, but I just put dotted lines to indicate it coming up to the top there. Not really super important, but we're actually going to look at the other points that are created up here as well, the capstone numbers, if you like. So 53 is the first one we're looking at. Okay, all I did was add the two angles here and here. Okay, as you would. These two angles, the 62.5 and the 64.5, add up to 127. Again, interesting numbers. Pearl Harbor, moon landing. What else am I thinking? The numbers of the towers. Okay, 1, 2, and 7. Okay, so we're adding up to 127. We just minus that from 180, and that gives us our angle up here, which is 53. Okay, and I've done the 53 stuff. Okay, you can go back and look at other videos for that, but I will show you something else that's interesting about the 53 in just a little bit. So that's super important that that number is up there. Okay, so we've done that. Let's get rid of some of this jazz off of here. We've also got two other capstone numbers. Okay, let's do the outer one first, where it encompasses the shadow, because that has the same, one of the same angles here for sure, which is this 62.5. okay, which is this angle right here. So that's 62.5. okay. The first thing I want to note about it is that if you mirror that thing, okay, look what we can get. Or not mirror it, but kind of invert it. Let's just call it inverting. Okay, because we know that from my previous stuff that 2 and a 5 is very significantly a mirror number, and of course the 6 and the 9, of course those are inversions as well, or rotations if you like. So it's easier just to call everything an inversion, because one way or the other it's twisted around. But we can get the numbers, this 29, we've got a 5-9 in here, which of course is a date that I've been looking at for the potential date for something to happen at the Hoover Dam. And also we've got the 2-9, and the 2-9 as well, which is an inversion of 5-9. And I was talking about that in the last couple of videos, but that 2-9 is the perfect balance point, I believe, within a set of numbers that's to do with the golden ratio, which is in my chart of Lorraine. Okay, so this is a super important number, this 29. Okay, this is the reduction and combination of 11, 18. Okay, and of course within that number there you can pick out 9, 11 as well. Okay, so super important stuff with that angle there. Well, if we combine it with another number that's in the chart of Lorraine here, this is a reversed version of a number that's in there and is very close to the well, we'll just go to the chart in a little bit and I'll show you, but we're going to combine this angle here, which is this 67, with this 62.5, and we're going to come up with 129.5. And again, without getting too bogged down with this number, okay, this has got our 5-9 in it, it's got our 2-9 in it, and you know, the 5-9, okay, the 9th of May is the 129th day of the year. Okay, this is this same date that I'm looking at. Okay, and it just so happens to be here. You know, I mean, I double checked all of these angles, triple checked them. I put my image back over the top of the dollar bill, and you know, looked at it, twisted it a little bit, looked at it, twisted it back a little bit, and I'm like, you know, I've got it in the right spot. These look right to me. But I mean, if you really wanted to fudge it, you could probably change, you know, maybe a degree even. Okay, you're still going to come up. You could possibly still come up with just a, you know, you're still going to come up with some interesting numbers, and you can still come up with this code, even fudging it back that half a degree. And just going back to 129 now instead. But I just did it where it looked right. Okay, so this is not me trying to work this into here. You know, this is the craziness of what stuff that I keep finding. Anyway, if we have this number for our combination down the bottom, the 129.5, that makes our capstone 50.5. Okay, and again, if we just look at that number with just basic numerology, get rid of the 0, get rid of the point as well, it's just 55. Yeah, there's our 55. Okay, so 55, super important with the returning of the spirit. Okay, the other number we had, the other angle we had in here was what I was coming up with, 69 here. Okay, so again, interesting, we had the 69, the 2 inversion number, you know, another 2 inversion numbers, and could that be giving us a clue to, like, hey, you need to change the 6 to a 9 for this to make sense? Okay, so the 6 changing to a 9 here and here and here, you know, this number right here, again, if we change this to a 9 here, okay, the 9th of April, okay, that is Easter this year. Okay, so that is the resurrection day for Christ this year. Okay, interesting, if this is changed to a 9 here, the 0.5, we also have the, we also have the 9-5 in here, the 9th of May. So it's just quite interesting that we have 69 down there in that bottom corner. So anyway, if we add the 69 to the 67, we're going to come up with 136. Again, you know, this is interesting. Hoover Dam, fully functional this year. You know, the 1936. Okay, whereas 1935, okay, is actually when it was finished. And that's what the little plaque on the side of it says, 1935. Okay, the same year that Elvis was born. Okay, the same year that the dollar bill, essentially in the format that it's in now, was born. Okay, so the 35, super interesting with that 53 there. But again, if we do the 136, our number here is 44. Okay, so our capstone number up here would be 44, which again is, some people would call that the kill number. Okay, I don't really want to do too much more for this, but I'm going to show you one more thing. It's pretty interesting because I want to show you some of these numbers in the chart of Lorraine. For new people that don't know what that thing is, we'll just go straight to it and we'll see some of those numbers. Okay, so the important thing to remember is, let's go to a different color here and let's just recall what I call, okay, I'm kind of getting fed up of saying this, but if you're new, if you would just go to this video and watch this first, okay, this will explain what this chart is. But very briefly, this is a chart of Fibonacci type numbers. So this has the golden ratio running through it, and the golden ratio is all about balance. And this is what God is all about balance. And so if we want to try and decode reality, we can use this table and we can draw certain images into this table, and we can kind of, just by looking at what numbers are next to each other and knowing that the center of the table is right here, we can actually deduce, we can actually get some meaning from certain numbers, okay, and try and look at the relationship between numbers. All right, so like I said, that's the middle of the table there, and the middle of the table happens to be a 1 on one side and a 1 on the other side. Okay, if we just look at the first two numbers from the center point of the table, okay, here's the Twin Towers, so we have a lot of encoding with the number 11. Okay, this is why 9/11 was such an important event. So we can draw through this number 11 that's right here in the table, and we can put a cross in here. Okay, and this is what I call the Great Scott, the cross of St. Andrew. Okay, it's the metaphysical cross that's in that we can put in here, and we can draw some conclusions from it. Okay, very quickly, when we do this cross here, when we do this portion of the cross here, this encodes from the date of 9/11. It encodes by doing number jumps here. Okay, I'm not going to explain the whole thing. This is in previous videos, but this encodes 129. Okay, it encodes the 29th of January. It also encodes the number, well, I'll say the number 59, but it encodes the 9th of May, which is the 129th day of the year also. Okay, so if you were recalling my previous videos, I've said about how 2 and 5 are mirrors of one another, and it's echoed throughout this table a hell of a lot. Okay, here's one I didn't show you in the previous decodes. This 5 at the top of the metaphysical column. Now look to the bottom, to the opposite, and again we have a 2. We have a 5 and a 2. Get rid of that 0. Don't count for nothing, right? 5 is opposing the 2 or reflecting the 2. Okay, the 5 is the 2, just as the 6 is the 9. Okay, this is more of a mirror on the 5 and the 2, and the 6 and the 9 is more of a rotation. Yeah, more of a cyclical inversion. Okay, but not to get too bogged down, but these numbers are encoded here. Okay, all right. And again, if we look in our table, I'll get to the point in a minute, but if we look in our table, the 5/9 again, 47 is referencing this 59, and so is this 73. Okay, 713. Okay, because they're all above each other here. Okay, and then we have the 14 on each side as well, which is also important. I'm not going to be talking about the 14 in this one, but I'm going to show you something else that's super duper really interesting, because I'm like, you know, here's our 53 that's at the top of the Eye of Providence. Okay, and I've talked to you again about this 23 being a mirror of this 53. Okay, and again, I've talked about the 153 jump, which is, again, if we go from this day here, the 13th of February, and we sum all of these numbers together, okay, across here, this comes to 315. Okay, this is this 53 or 35 with the number 1 in the center of it, because this is what we're trying to get to, the 1, become the 1. Okay, and if we do this 315-day jump from this date right here, okay, it's going to take us to Christmas. Okay, again, this number is a reference to the birth of the 1. Okay, so again, it being at the top of the Eye of Providence as an angle, I believe that's what it is. This is super duper significant. What else do I want to say about this? Okay, I was looking at this and I was thinking to myself, you know, if we're coming out of the dam, then that's the upside down triangle. Okay, that's the pointing down triangle. Yeah, that's what the representation of the womb, or the V for Eve. Okay, so I'm like, well, why don't I just put it on here? And I literally, let's get rid of that a second. Let's put a straight line on here. I'm like, I'll just draw some, you know, just to put a V in here. And I'm like, well, I'll just go, I just did this basically. And I was like, wow. I was like, holy crapoli, to use some French there. I was like, wow, okay, so I've got the 53, which is the top of the pyramid. So I've got an inverted pyramid here. And what numbers do I have? I got the 59, okay, re-referenced, okay, because it looks good, this V. I mean, you can draw a V, a really wide one or a really narrow one, but this one looked right, okay. And what was even better about it was, well, the 29 is in the center of it, okay. We've also got this 713 here, which is another it's in the center of it again, which is a re-reference again, right here to the 59 that's right here. Okay, so I got this 713 here. I got this 68 right here as well, which is again, the Queen's death date, or here's all the Queen numbers running down here, her funeral, her birthday. But again, so we got this 68, 86 here. Haven't really thought about this 218, but that number actually comes up. There's a guy, I can't remember exactly which channel that is actually, so I won't try to remember and say the wrong person, but another guy that talks about 218 a lot. Okay, and that's just another version, I believe, of, it's like the opposite version of 911. Okay, because here's our 1118 at the center of the table. This 9, of course, this 18 can also be, this is reduced to a 9. Here's our 911. Or you could do it the other way around and leave the 18, okay, and reduce the 11 to a 2, and that would give you your 218, okay. But interestingly, let's just get rid of this a second. This reduced into a 9 here, this 18 reduced into a 9. On the other side of here, this 47 that this part of the V goes through, that also reduces to an 11. So we have a 911 on the way to the 59 at the top, breaching the wall, coming over the top of the wall. This would be the top of the wall right here, coming over the top of this thing. So again, just interesting. And of course we've also got the God number at the bottom of here, L, the 37 or 73. I don't know what else to say apart from also Elvis, in the name Elvis, this 37 and 53 is heavily encoded just in the letters of Elvis. So it's pretty nuts, to say the least. You know what you can get out of this thing. Okay. I don't really want to go too much further than this. I think that's enough to process, you know, but there's 47 again right here. Again, that shows up right here. Okay, and I can't remember if I said this, but here's our 76 or 67, which was one of those angles as well. So, I mean, you know, really, I don't know what else to say apart from, oh, and the other important thing, of course, is 18, the 180, of course, what shaping encodes 180 is the blooming triangle, yeah? Our angles add up to 180 degrees. So, you know, and this is the important thing. You know, this 180 is just half of the equation, I guess, because to do a full cycle, you have to do 360 degrees, okay? And I guess what you could do, and I did do this, just to mess a little bit more, we can come up from this 20 up to the 7, okay? And we come from this 1, 3, 9 back up to the 7. And of course, you get the double cross here. The double cross of Lorraine, that's why I call this chart. But not for that reason, but you do get another double cross. You know, you'll see this thing popping up. Actually, Back to the Future springs to mind. Back to the Future 2, actually, in the backdrop when Marty comes out of the hotel, Cafe 80s, Hotel 80s. Comes out the hotel, Cafe 80s, okay, he ends up, this is in the background, this double cross, okay, and this means a lot of things, you know, but obviously the upward arrow here, and again, you know, the 29 remains at the center of that thing, okay, and the other two numbers that are within the diamond at that point is the 37 and the 13, okay. So again, numbers that I've talked about before. I don't really want to go into it too much, but we've got other numbers popping up here. We got 27 that we could pull out. That's interesting because I believe it was the Oroville. I think it was the Oroville spillway. That was the date when that. I'm pretty sure it was the 7th of February. That was when that spillway basically started collapsing, and they thought they could have a major problem on their hands if it completely crumbled all the way back up to the dam, I guess, and the dam was breached. And I think they ended up evacuating, I don't know, probably, I think it was somewhere in the region of 180,000 people, maybe. That 18 on the way to that there. You know, so you can pull out events from these numbers. Again, the 139 is super important on this bottom leg again, because this is a completion, a total for the number 7 column, and it's like, you know, that's a completion number, you know. I don't know what else to say about it, really. I'm just trying to think what other numbers I've missed out of here. You know, we got the 25 now showing up here, or the 52 on the corners. And again, room 237 now starts looking interesting with, you know, the inversion of this 53 to maybe 23, you know, and 237 is the, you know, just a hidden, again, it's just the hidden top and bottom of this thing, room 237. And again, room 237, an inversion of the 5. So again, in the film, The Shining 237 is a dodgy room. You know, it's the place where the old whore, the old hag, where Jack thinks he falls in love with the beautiful version of it, and then realizes that she's really an old hag. Okay, I don't know what else to say really. Yeah, I could probably go on for ages on these numbers. I don't really want to do that, but an interesting pattern, XX. I don't know. And we can start putting. I could start putting other, crosses in to decode now. One more little thing before I get off of this completely is what I will say one more time about this. See, this is not on the page now, but without having to resize this, is that there are some other numbers in here. I'm not putting them in this decode just simply because it gets there's just too much, okay? But we can add up these different angles. Like we could add this one to this one, okay? And we can add these two together, and we'll come up with some interesting numbers, okay? And we can add these two together, interesting numbers that pop up, but I'm not doing it in this decode. I think that's enough for this decode. Did I say this? The corner of this thing right here ends up on the N in Novus for Neo the One. Okay, I think that's interesting with the again the 14 that surrounds that number 59 in the table. Okay, that 14 is kind of referenced on this corner with this angle. It's just touching the I can't remember if it's touching the top corner or the bottom corner. We could just go look at it now. Okay, it's actually touching the top corner here. Okay, if you can see my cursor. But again, it's touching that 14. Yeah, the clock tower 10:04. So, man, I don't know. This is just what I'm coming up with. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that wasn't too long. And like I said, there's a lot more to it, but just to try and keep it fairly simple and straightforward. I'll catch you on the next one. All right. Cheers. Bye.